Let's take a look at destructuring in ES6. The destructuring assignment syntax is a JavaScript expression that makes it possible to unpack values from arrays or properties from objects into distinct variables. Let's see what that looks like in code. So for the first example, we're going to pull out different elements from a JavaScript object. Const person equal to a JavaScript object where I might have something like color is equal to blue, name is equal to John, state is equal to New York, and position is equal to Ford. And below, if I wanted to get at these attributes, I could say something like console.log person.color and person.position. And this would work just fine. And I would see blue, and I would see Ford. But if we look at this, there's actually some overhead here. The only thing that I need person for is to get to color and position. At destructuring, you no longer have to have that overhead. If all I care about is the color and the position in this example, I can just do this. I can say destructure that object and give me the color and the position. And then here, I can just get straight to the elements that I want. And it works the same way. For the second example, what we're going to do is we're going to do a very similar thing, but we're going to show a kind of a neat trick within destructuring, and it gives you some more power. So we're going to have const generate function or generate object is equal to an arrow function that takes no parameters and it returns an object. And inside that object, we're going to go ahead and steal the same thing that we did earlier. And then down here, we're going to say const. We're going to look for, in this example, name and state is equal to generate object. And then down here, I can say console.log name state. And if we run this code, you'll see that that works just fine. But what happens if you don't want to use the existing name from the object? So if you're working with an existing database or API, you don't necessarily want to be married to those names forever and ever, right? So you want to be able to have the ability to rename things as you see fit. So what I can do is here is I can say get name out of the object that comes back, and what I want you to do is I want you to rename that to first name in this example. And then down here I can say first name. And you can see that what that allows you to do is basically rename things however you see fit, which is a useful thing when working with someone else's code base, API, database, things like that. Let's take a look at another example, this time with arrays instead of objects. If I had a const of colors, and that array held things like red, yellow, and green, and I wanted to print those things, I could say const first is equal to colors at 0. And if I wanted to do this at the third, I could do const third is equal to colors at 2. And then I could say console.log first and console.log third. And I could use this and it would print the first and the third color as expected. But we're kind of back into the same pattern of colors is overhead again, right? And this time, all I have to do is say, give me the first, second, and third. You can name these variables whatever you want. These make sense. And so here I can just say print the first and print the third. And it cuts out some of the overhead that we saw before. In addition to, it's easier to read. Another example. This time we're going to start out with const. We're going to have an array of people. Inside of our array of people, we're going to have objects. Let's do first name is equal to Sarah. We'll do last name is equal to Blue. And her phone will be a fictitious 1-387-555-0887. And the email will be Clinton@google.com. Let's grab one more person too. So this time first name will be Frank, last name Rivers, 289, another fictitious phone number, 2303. And then the email for this person would be frank@apple.com. So now that we have an array of two people objects, what we can do is we can start to look at how we would pull these things out and work with these different elements. So I'm going to use a Foreach loop here. So people.Foreach, and a Foreach loop takes a function, and it takes what happens each iteration. So for each people, I'm going to get a person. And so inside of here, what I want to have is I want to say console.log person.firstname, for example. And if we run this, we would see I expect Sarah and then Frank. But again, we back to some overhead, right? So what we're seeing is person is only needed so that I can get to first name. If our task that we were given is, hey, just print the first name of everybody in the array, this person thing is it's not really needed anymore, right? So what you can do is, instead of having person here, you can just say, hey, for each iteration, find the first name, and then we can just print the first name. And we get back to what we want. So that's pretty useful. For the last example, what we're going to see is we're going to take this same people object and we're going to work with it again. So I'm going to comment on this, but we're going to leave the array of people since we're still going to reuse it. And this time we're going to say const. And what I want to get to, right, is the second person in the array. And the way you do that with destructuring of an array is I'm going to leave the first thing empty, and I need to get to the second element. So what we're going to have here is we're going to say Frank is number 2 is equal to people. So now I've destructured the second element of this array into a variable called Frank. And then what I want to do is I want to say, I want to write a function that logs email. So I want to say const log email equal to a function that takes in a person, and then at console.log person.email. And again, we see the same pattern as before, right? So this person, this is kind of the red flag. I don't actually need to do this. What I can say is I'm still going to get a person, right? But out of that person object, just grab the email. And so now when I say log email, and I'm going to pass in Frank that I destructured out of the array earlier, what I should see is frank@apple.com.